Looks like it.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 1:15. We might have a couple of others joining, is that it? What about that other gentleman that was?
Oh, yeah, he'll be in about 15 minutes.
Okay, okay, fine. All right. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, he's not here with us yet, is he? Number 3?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we take item number 3A under new business before, I'm sorry, take item number 4A under old business. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, roll call, Mr. Pilling.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Myers.
Aye.
Mr. Hines.
Aye.
Mr. Aggie.
Aye.
Mr. Fuller. Aye. Is Mr. Ferry with us yet?
No,
Okay. I think we got everybody.
just
Okay.
a point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
If you can just introduce everybody that's here in the room, so what do they call it? Like an introduction or whatever, so everybody at home knows who we are.
Okay, so we're going to go around with introductions. So just give your name and the board or committee you represent. We'll start with Mr. Aggie.
James Aggie, Building Commissioner.
Timothy Ryan's representing the planning board.
Lisa Caledonia, Conservation Agent.
Thomas Fires, representing Board of Health. Oh, I'm sorry.
Bill Fournette, Dayton Conservation Commission.
Todd Pilling, Stormwater Agent.
And Nancy Goulet, Board of Selectmen. Okay, so agenda item 4A, Brook Street Solar Easement. Who would like to start this?
I actually think we're looking for an update on.
Oh, okay, all right. Is that the only thing we were waiting for? Because we were going to get revised plans. And I don't know, I told Mr. Ferry that I believe we're going to have to record this agreement. And so I asked him to get us the large set of plans, and we're probably going to need a Mylar to record it. So that small plan we had at the last meeting didn't show the final drawing of the bridge to get heavy equipment in there like fire trucks. And I also wanted the guardrail that we talked about that's going to be on Brook Street shown in the plan. I think those were the last updates to the plans, as I remember.
That's correct. I haven't seen them yet.
Okay. So I did send an email to Attorney Matt Costa. And what I found, what I was referring to as a reverse easement, in effect is not an easement. There is something that towns are allowed to do called licenses. My main concern was with easements, they're either temporary or permanent. And I certainly wouldn't want a permanent easement on town land that we know some ways in the future that the solar farm may be taken down and go away, and then you get somebody with a permanent easement. So anyhow, a license will allow the work to be done on town land, and it will be maintained according to the regulations under the supervision of Mr. Ferry. And I explained that we were going to have a bond so that if the drainage area and all that was not maintained, the town would do it and use that money to do it. So Mr. Costa is drafting a license, and obviously he needs a copy of the latest plans. And once that's done, it will come to the Board of Selectmen for a vote of approval and get recorded. What it means is exactly what we were looking for. It will allow the developer to do the work of the drainage ditch, to make we keep calling it the bridge, the entrance wide enough that meet the specs in the plans that were presented. And when the time comes that if the solar panels, it's decommissioned and whatever, and there's no longer a need for that license, in effect, it will expire. It will not have an expiration date initially because we don't know when that would end, but ownership of that property will remain with the town of Dayton. And any work, maintenance, anything will be under the direction of the highway superintendent. So it's in the works. And I think probably it's just a formality at this point. I did mention at the department head meeting today that I would be mentioning this to the Board of Selectmen. And I gave Leanne a placeholder to ask me about that licensing agreement as we move forward. I guess the next step is so we'll get that issued. And now this is back to you as building commissioner.
Right, okay, so then it would be appropriate for Todd and I, or Todd or I, to request the plan that you just mentioned, so that when the license can be acted upon by the selectmen, it would reference said plan.
Yes.
Okay, all right, we'll make sure that we do that.
Yeah, and I asked Mr. Ferry to get in touch with the engineer and tell him exactly what it was he needed. And the plans have to be drawn, just like if we hired Roy Delano to do it. Obviously, this is at their expense. So it has to be to that detail, and it has to be recordable.
Okay.
So it has to be signed by the appropriate engineers, because I know, they don't accept, is it land engineers at the registry? There's something about a signature that's required from an engineer. And I know in the past, there's been a question about that, but we haven't had a problem in this town.
Yeah, no, I don't think that would be a concern.
That would only be a survey if you were transferring land, but you're not transferring land here. So.
Yeah, no, we're recording an agreement with an open end, but again, it's not an easement per se.
So I'm assuming council will have some reversion clause if the solar farm was abandoned, then that license would be reverted or revoked. Okay.
Yeah, it'll terminate.
So Agent Pilling and I will confer with Superintendent Curry, and then we'll request the appropriate plans from the developer.
And my understanding is from what the email I got back from Attorney Costa was, if the project, the solar farm, should change owners down the road, this will remain in full force and effect, and the maintenance clauses and everything else that's in there will go with it. It's just that ownership will never change from the town.
The only thing I would add, if it's not too late, I'm sure it's not, is that the use of the property must be a solar farm. I wouldn't want that license to transfer if they propose a different use. I would like to revisit this if the use of the property was changed. I don't know if any of my colleagues have any.
Yeah, that makes sense, because supposedly when a solar farm is decommissioned, the intent is to return the land to as near as the condition was before it became a solar farm. But by the same token, if somebody proposes a development of some kind, buildings, whatever, yes, certainly this license is going to be restricted to that use. And I will send that off to Attorney Costa, and also ask him if he can think of any other conditions or restrictions that should be on there. Please feel free to add them, because again, the entire intent is let them do what they need to do, but they will never own the land. And the license is, it would go to the next owner, but it would not go to something beyond the original intent, which is the solar farm. Yes, Mr. Pilling.
Point of order, Tom Ferry, our highway superintendent, has joined the meeting.
Okay. Tom, did you hear anything of what I said about the conversation, emails I've had with Attorney Costa?
No, I have nothing to add. I understand them.
I'm sorry? Please repeat.
I said I have nothing to add or comment. I do understand them, though.
Okay, all right. So the next thing will be when I get that draft agreement, we'll get it out to the committee so that you can look at it and see if any of you look at that and say, what about this? We need to add that. And then we'll get it back to Attorney Costa, and in its final form, it will go to the Board of Selectmen for action. Okay, so the next step, that's what we were waiting for. So from your perspective, Building Commission, what's the next step that has to be done?
Well, they can apply for the building permit simultaneously while this is going on.
Okay.
But until the selectmen grant them that actual license for access, I cannot give them a building permit. So there'll be no activity out there until that happens. They may, with the guidance of the Conservation Commission, start to set up their erosion control, but no vehicular access would be allowed.
Okay, so as far as the stormwater permit now, that's all going to be contingent on the same agreement.
Yes, but I think we as a board can make a motion to approve the permit with conditions based on the ratification of the licensing agreement with the selectmen. I don't know that we need to wait until the license agreement is in place.
Okay,
I think we can approve subject to that license agreement being ratified by the BOS.
okay, okay. I will entertain a motion then to approve.
Do you have a list of conditions, Agent Miller?
Maybe. No, I can go downstairs and grab it though.
Sorry.
Five. Okay.
Just for informational purposes, while we're waiting for Mr. Pilling, Selectman Zagrafis got emails from residents concerned about this committee meeting in this room, and about some members not wearing masks all the time, and concerns about, I guess, violation of all the COVID rules and regs. So you should have all gotten an email from me explaining what that was, but for the public, as I told Selectman Zagrafis, we were not in violation of any rules and regs. First of all, everyone every community, everyone is obligated to provide reasonable access, reasonable accommodation to committee members who might have a particular disability. As I explained, 2 members of our committee do wear hearing aids. Therefore, the first concern is we must have reasonable accommodations so that they can participate. They are not obligated to wear masks because they have hearing aids. They also have to see the person that's talking and be able to lip read. As we know, at times, more times than usual, we all have difficulty trying to zoom in on a meeting, and they've experienced this also. So us meeting publicly together in this hall, Mr. Pilling has made sure that each time a meeting is set up, we are distanced apart, that we are positioned so that members can read, members can read lips. We have made sure that all of the COVID rules and regs are being observed. Now, there was some other misinformation. So meeting in this room, because we are observing the number of people who can be present, we're all set. But also to correct some other misinformation. I'm not sure everyone understands what the governor was saying. If you're out in public, you must wear a mask. Well, for example, when we were on Brook Street doing a site visit, when we were standing on Brook Street, the side of the road, we were on public property and we had masks on. When we went onto private property, we were not obligated to wear those masks. However, for the most part, everybody did, unless we stopped and there was some questions and answers. And a couple of times individuals were asked to just lower their masks so that members of the committee could read lips. So again, when we were out doing site visits, yes, we wore masks. I know I dropped mine a couple of times because my glasses were so fogged up, or I just wanted to get some fresh air, but at no time did we violate anything. So I would just encourage anyone that has a question, or if you think we may have not followed the rules or regs, just send an email to me, ngoulart@comcast.net, or you can send it to the Board of Health or make a phone call. And if you have questions, we'll gladly answer them. But we just want you to know, at no time with our in-person meetings have we violated COVID. But again, first concern is to make reasonable accommodations, which we have always done. So Mr. Pilling is back.
All right, I couldn't find the one we had prepped for. Couldn't find the one we prepped for Brook Street. But the conditions that we were talking about was a pre-construction meeting, installing and maintaining the erosion control, provide a stormwater pollution prevention plan, provide drainage and access road as-built plans, submitted and approved prior to issuance of a certificate of completion. We usually ask for drainage test bits at the drainage basins, but in this case, they've already been done, so we don't need that. We would still want to inspect the basins probably at rough. Under stormwater maintenance, the operation and maintenance plan, a long-term pollution plan, and annual reports forwarded to the committee. And then we need to establish a stormwater maintenance 53AG account. We've usually been doing about $5,000 per basin. There are 2 basins out on this site, so normally we would go about $10,000.
And this would exclude the access box culvert that we were talking about earlier. That amount of funds would be in addition to the 2 on-site basins.
Yes, that exactly, because of, I'll call it the uniqueness of that drainage system along Brook Street.
Right.
And the little bridge there that we've talked about.
The other thing that was discussed because of the neighbors' concern with drainage and runoff, that the 2 basins would be roughed in by pre-construction. So that means after the erosion control, the lot is treed and cleared, that the drainage basins are going to be required to be roughed in before they can actually start installing panels. Normally, that happens much later in the process, but because of the topography and the neighbors' concerns, this committee at the site visit felt it was appropriate to do that. So I would want that in the condition confirmed as well.
Do you have that, Mr. Pilling?
I do. Drainage basins to be roughed in prior to installation of panels.
Panel infrastructure.
Panel infrastructure. And did we say we want the bond amount to be more than 10,000 to include the culvert, or just leave it at the 10,000 and but include the culvert?
I believe it should be a separate we said $5,000 and it should be separate. Because quite frankly, if it were 15,000, that could be spent trying to, if the other two are not properly maintained, you could spend that and then you'd have nothing on that drainage thing. And since that's so unique, it would be 10,000 in total for the two basins in the development, but then it would be $5,000 for the drainage out on Brook Street. And again, as long as these basins and the drainage is maintained, this money is not going to get expended. It's only if they're not maintained properly or they're neglected or anything else, and the town has to step in and do the work, that these accounts would be accessed to reimburse for any work that the town has to do. Does anyone on the committee have a question or comment?
I have one comment.
Yes.
I don't have any paper record, Conservation Commission doesn't have any paper record of the orders being recorded, and I'd like one email to me, please. You can find my email on the town website.
They're not actually here at the hearing right now, so the neighbors are here, but the applicant isn't, so.
Okay. I'm sorry, what paper record of the orders of condition? No, sorry, yeah, the recorded orders of condition, so. If it was recorded, hopefully it was, it needs to be before the staff work. And I need a paper copy, email.
Because that's stormwater related, I think we can put as a condition on a permit that we see that prior to issuance, or one of my colleagues here.
Yeah, that works. I mean,
Yes, we can add a condition, the Conservation Commission order conditions needs to be recorded prior to pre-construction meeting. Proof of, yeah.
Lisa, have those been issued?
Yes, they were issued. They expired at the end of the year. Well, that will, otherwise we got an extension.
So the question is whether or not they've been recorded at the registry?
Yeah, I just want to see the recording information.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Anything from the abutters? Does any abutters?
That was on.
Want to start over, please?
Laureen, anything?
No, I don't.
Are there any other brothers other than Mrs. Beausoleil here?
I don't know who C. Ryan is. And I forget which one, Frank Christofuli?
Oh, that's Welling. Yeah, that's Arujos.
Okay. What about C. Ryan? C. Ryan, if you can like spell out your name.
Sure, it's Christopher Ryan. Yeah, R-Y-A-N.
And you were affiliated with?
Meridian Associates.
All right, can you rename yourself and put that in there, please?
Yeah, if I can figure out how to do that, sure.
Reasonable accommodation start.
I may need to leave and come back in, I guess.
No, like. Meridian Associates?
Yes.
And is that Arujos? Or is that? No, that's Hunter's Hill, isn't it?
No, it's for the Arujo project.
Oh, okay.
I saw here and know more about us.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion. And the motion is to approve the issuing the stormwater permit on the Brook Street project with conditionally, and the conditions have already been stated, and they will be included in the motion. Person making the motion doesn't have to read all those, but I need a motion to approve issuing the stormwater permit based on conditions that will be included in the motion.
I will make a motion to approve with the said conditions as discussed.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. It's Mr. Rhines. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Mr. Pilling,
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre,
Aye.
Mr. Rhines,
Aye.
Mr. Pires,
Aye.
Mr. Burnett,
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart, aye. Mr. Ferry,
Aye.
Oh, you gotta unmute, Jim. Okay, sorry.
Mr. Ferry,
No, you,
Aye.
hang on.
You can't hear me?
Technical
I
difficulties.
said aye.
I hate this.
okay, is the gentleman on from Hunters Hill?
Yes,
Agenda-
Evan is here.
Okay, agenda item, we'll return to agenda item 3A, new business, which is review, discuss, act, Hunters Hill proposed expansion application fees. Mr. Pilling.
Noon. Nope. Thank you for having us and allowing us to come to your meeting. My name is Evan Watson with W Engineering. I represent the applicant, Long-Built Homes, or the proposed applicant, Long-Built Homes. What we're looking to do is talk about the Hunters Hill project that's in Dayton. I'm sure everyone here is on the commission is familiar with the property. I don't know if it'd be acceptable, but could I share my screen to put a figure on the screen?
Okay, before you do that, Mr. Pilling, did you want to speak, or do you want him?
No, he can go.
Go ahead.
Wait, I gotta give him photo duty. Hold on.
Nope. Thank you.
No.
Okay, let's see. All right, I'm sharing a graphic on my screen. I don't know if it's showing.
Yes.
We can see
Okay.
it.
Yep.
Okay, just checking. Sometimes I go on and it's not showing. So, so I have a plan here that shows the status of the Hunters Hill subdivision. So on the bottom of the screen is Anderson Drive. To the left is William Street, north being straight up. And this is a project that was designed and approved back in 2004, 2005, thereabouts, prior to the town's enacting, of the stormwater bylaw. So this project was designed, approved without any regard to the new bylaw. However, it did have a notice of intent and followed the stormwater policy at the time, stormwater management policy. And there was stormwater controls and everything that was designed and approved at the time. So what you see here in green, now there's 140 homes total in this community, and 34 of them have been constructed. The roadway infrastructure, the drainage, the water line, and the sewer infrastructure has all been completed for those 34 homes. That includes 2 stormwater basements here, and there is a proprietary BMP, I believe it's a vortex unit up here at the front. All the stormwater, all the sanitary sewage, everybody has an individual pump, and it's a low pressure sewer system that goes up to a Title V septic system. And part of our special permit approval is that no more than 34 homes can be constructed on that Title V septic system. And we're in the works of upgrading that to a groundwater discharge permit type system to handle the remaining homes. The other thing that's been done so far is Long-Built has requested a modification of the special permit to allow the golf course, that there was originally a golf course associated with this project and the community center. So the permit's been revised to not require the golf course, proposed community center to be designed at a later time. So the remaining work at the rest of the 106 homes is the roadways and associated stormwater infrastructure. So we have 3 stormwater basins shown on this plan. They have sediment, there's deep some catch basins, sediment 4 bays, wet basins, all the types of things that you would normally see with a modern day design. So the last thing that we need to get to move ahead, a notice of intent or an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. So we filed that last week. We've been asked to, redelineate the wetlands and things. We're hoping to have a meeting with the Conservation Commission next month on the next month's meeting. And then the other last piece is that we did not have to comply with the stormwater regulations because they did not exist. So we have filled out an application to receive a stormwater permit. But this being something that's relatively unique, where it was designed, permitted, and approved prior to the regulation being enacted, we weren't sure on how we wanted to handle moving forward. We're making the assumption that we're subject to the regulation. I'm not 100% sure if we are, but that's one item that we wanted to discuss. And the other item to discuss was the fee. Normally, we would be paying a fee for a residential subdivision by lot. And here we've already had all the lots essentially approved, and we're coming in after the fact. So we weren't sure what the fee would be. Again, if we were subject to filing this permit, what the fee would actually be. And then we wanted to make sure that when we give the board the information, that we're giving you all the information that you're used to seeing. So if you take a look at the report that I wrote, I have a section in there about where all the information that you would normally request for the stormwater permit is located in the notice of intent stormwater report. So if anybody has any questions for me about the project or the applicant or the status of where we are.
I have a question not related specifically to stormwater. How are you going to dispose of sewage if you're close to capacity already for that section you've got for Title 5? How are you going to take care of all those blue lots?
Yep, that's a good question. So right now there's a Title 5 disposal system that does not have a treatment system on it, and that handles the 34 homes. And what we would need to do is construct an additional disposal system that can handle all 140 lots, but with a secondary treatment system on it that would meet the requirements of the groundwater discharge permit program. So it will be about the same size as what's there, but because we have a treatment plant associated with it, it can be loaded much higher, and you get a much better system up there. So we're constructing a new system.
When will there be a plan that's complete that shows that?
So
I assume this is the original, I'll call it the old plan. And so you're going to have to make revisions, certainly to show that sewage disposal area. But when do you expect to have an updated plan?
So that sewage disposal was shown on the original plan, and that was all part of the original approval as well, that system. It was, and it's the approval of that system is through the state DEP and not through the local Board of Health. So that was shown schematically on the original plan, and then those plans will be developed and we'll submit them to DEP for approval.
Okay, but I would assume that the town would have a copy of those also.
That's correct. Yeah, the town will be copied with that.
Okay. When did you say you were originally permitted?
2005. I think the original submittal was 2004. Yeah, so if I look here, we have submittal 2004. I believe the permit through the planning board was actually issued in 2005 at the end, and one of the conditions was to just update the plans with the conditions of approval. So you'll see these plans are dated February 2006.
Okay, so the town of Dayton, I believe, enacted the bylaw and all the regulations in 2007. However, the town of Dayton got fined by the EPA for not having met the requirements of the notice of intent it had filed years before, which would have been before this happened. So what I'm saying is the town may have not had a formal bylaw and the regulations, but the fact that the EPA fined the town for not meeting the requirements of its notice of intent, which backed up several years before that, does not excuse you from the fact that we do have these now. They go back to, I'm sure, 2007. And I'm sure if we dug back further, we could find out when that first NOI was issued to the EPA, because it was in effect in enough years to get fined. And that's what prompted the town to actually do what they said they were going to do in the notice of intent. So I do believe you are obligated to follow the stormwater bylaw and the rules and regulations, because they're based on everything that the EPA said we had to do in order to come into compliance. And if those rules and regs were not codified by the town of Dayton, but the EPA decided they had enough clout to fine us, I think it kind of settles it. There were two communities that got fined at the same time. It was around the end of 2006, the beginning of 2007, and it was Dayton and Rehoboth. And we were made examples of for not being in compliance. So I really think whether or not you have to comply with current regulations and the bylaw is really not up for discussion, because the rules and regs were there even if the town of Dayton hadn't codified them. They were still there. It was a requirement of the EPA. So that's my comment on the bylaw and the rules and regs. Do any committee members wish to comment on anything you've heard? Mr. Pilling.
Yep, first of all, I just want to say that the engineer did submit a stormwater application to this office. As he said earlier, he does believe that they are going to have to get a stormwater permit. He did not pay the filing fee, because the question before us at this point in time is just, does he need the permit and what the filing fee is? I will say there's questions here, obviously, with the Planning Board and Conservation Commission, whether the permits are still valid or whether they need modifications and all the rest of it. That's for another time. So the way I see it is what he's got up on the screen there in blue is what hasn't been built for houses and lots in the septic system. And I believe the stormwater permit should be based on that, because it's all going to be disturbed. Now, they may have already cut in the roads and the sewer lines and everything else, but they're now going to be paving and everything else. So as far as I'm concerned, it's still disturbance, and I think the filing fee should be based on that. But that is like the only question. This is not a public hearing. This is just a discussion of what the filing fee is.
Mr. Aggie?
Yeah, I think this is going to go to the planning board and be a major modification to your previously granted permit. So that alone tells me that stormwater permit is applicable. We can discuss as a committee what the fee structure would be, but I tend to agree with Agent Pilling right now in the preliminary stages that anything that hasn't been built would then be applied both to the stormwater permit and to the fee structure.
Anybody else?
Yes, Tim Ryan's the chairman of the planning board. We've had numerous discussions with Mr. Cassidy, who represents Long-Built Homes, and he was abreast and apprised of the situation going forward with the contractor would need to do in order to build out up at the facility. And we did mention that they're gonna have to go in front of the Stormwater Committee for future approvals, even though they haven't been approved by a decision in the past, because the sport being new, that our rules and regulations now supersede what was in place before at that time. So Mr. Castanetti and they have been told that that was going to transpire. We have made the modification through the planning board, has been voted on with conditions, and Mr. Castanetti has all those conditions. If you need a copy of those conditions, please reach out to Mrs. Kerry today. She's our planning board office manager, and you reach 508-639-6441, extension 7, or via email at AACJ-Diagnostics.gov.
Lisa, you have something?
Well, I think Kevin and I already talked about the fact that, you know, wetlands, although they were delineated and approved 15 years ago, that these things changed, so. However, I will, just for the record, I want to know that if, I know you told me hired wetland biologists to do the work. So there's no one going on right now, it is not growing season, so please don't come back, you know, you're gonna end up needing another continuance. Don't come back and say it's been delineated in March, because it's not gonna be accepted until the growing season. So you might as well have them wait and delineate it properly. I also want to make sure that they're following our local Conservation Commission bylaw as well, and addressing any isolated
As a PVP did.
potential vernal pools on site, isolated areas. And as far as stormwater goes, when I did read through what you submitted, and I would say that, you know, the models that were previously used probably are going to have to be different because the land has been cleared, correct?
Somewhat, yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have.
Do you want to say that?
The only thing I was questioning was the time limit on completion of the subdivision, which I think would be 5 years. Correct. So that being said, anything that was in place would have to be resubmitted, in my opinion.
Or re-inspected if it was put in and stuff. But this is a discussion for the planning board probably, and once we open the public hearing here, so. Do you have anything you want to say? I just have two quick questions. What is that area in blue? How much are we talking about?
Well, it's 106
How many acres?
homes. I don't have the acreage off the top of my head. But
Okay.
I could calculate that easily.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So the other question I had is, the other thing I wanted to state is the stormwater management regulations were in effect at the time, were revised in 2008, which is 2 years after. So there may need to be some revisions to the drainage design that is out here. I did take a brief look through everything that was there. One of the things that is kind of a pet peeve is we're going to want to see some test pits in all these drainage basins to make sure that they comply with proper separation of water table. But you said these were, you called them wet basins, but I believe on the plans they're labeled irrigation ponds. So obviously we'll have to sort some of that stuff out too, but that's for later on.
Evan, do you have a copy of the latest bylaw and the stormwater regs?
I do.
Okay, because I'm looking and I see completed drainage pond. One of the amendments after it was initially approved defines retention, detention, and infiltration basins, which is really what we're talking about. I don't know what drainage pond, what category it would fall into, but in any case, those three definitions were put in there because it was felt they were very important, because obviously we don't want water just lying around because of the mosquito menace that we all face in the summertime. So any kind of basin that's built, we hope it's going to drain within a reasonable period of time so we don't have standing water. The other thing I would mention is Mr. Fournette slid the subdivision plans over to me to look at. And yes, the earliest date is 2004. But as I said, the town got fined by the EPA for not complying with its notice of intent 3 years in a row, which would back the fines up to somewhere around 2003 at least. And that's what made us take the action we did to get everything in compliance. So the fact that, again, EPA recognized that the town was not in compliance by having the bylaw and the regs did not excuse the fact that it had to be done and they had to comply with, in effect, the rules and regs of the EPA, which is what everything we've done is based on. So again, I would say you are going to have to go through the process for the stormwater permit, and certainly what Ms. Caldonia talked about for the Conservation Commission, and any of the other conditions or comments made by both Mr. Pilling and Mr. Aggie. Do you have any, and Mr. Rhines from the Planning Board, do you have any questions of us?
No, I just thank you very much for, it was more of a curiosity of what triggered the need to have this permit, and I'm glad you were able to clarify that for us. And we have no problem making sure that we comply with the permit. It's we're not looking to get around anything for sure. We just want to make sure that we're making everything, checking all the boxes and having everything in compliance.
And
I guess
I
the only
understand
question
that,
would be what the
and,
fee would. Oh, I'm sorry.
And I understand that, and you know, I realize, I know they've been talking about Hunter's Hill forever, it seems to me. But this committee also is dealing with solar farms, and as such, obviously, clearing of land and things of that nature that relate to solar farms, we're talking acres and acres. And some of the large solar companies don't understand what it is or why they have to comply. And so this is just one of the reasons why in discussing this, if you have any questions as you go through this about the bylaw or the regs, please get back to us, because I think some people think it's a horrendous process. Maybe because we've worked with it so often, not really, but initially it can be a shock and say, we got to do what? But actually this committee, working with other boards and committees in town, we work together well, and the main concern is to protect the environment and make sure we're in compliance, because we know EPA is out there watching us. We've been nailed once. Hopefully we don't get nailed again. So again, if you have any questions of any of us or the boards, just feel free to ask them or email them into Mrs. Grassi, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you. I guess my only last question would be, you asked me if I have the most current reg. So long as the reg and bylaw that's posted on your website is the most current, that's what I have a copy of. So
yes, that would be the latest. There hasn't been amendments to that for quite a while, and I believe it was the amendments that were made was we increased the size of the disturbed area to 35,000 square feet, and we put in 3 definitions. Those are the ones that I'm aware of. So whatever's on the website is most recent.
great. And so the fee you would be expecting is the residential house, residential subdivision fee times 106 lots.
Again?
Yeah, no, he's asking if the fee should be based on the number of lots, as opposed to like the acres of disturbance. But this is a conservation subdivision.
Yes.
Right, so the lots are smaller here, but it still would warrant the same type of inspection, because this permit covers you all the way through all the inspections and all the way through the as-built and stuff. So obviously there's a lot of homes we need to look at here, and test pits and reviews, and it's going to go on for, looks to me like several years worth of construction. So if you want to do the calc, whatever, and throw it over, and we can take a look at the fee, and you and I can go back and forth on that and figure out what it is. But I believe the entire blue area definitely has to be included. So it should be probably by the lot.
Okay, so we'll work with you then, Todd, on the calculation of the fee. Like Lisa was saying, we have some work to do here. We have a wetland specialist hired to redelineate the wetlands. I actually did a site walk myself to take a look at things. So we do have some work to do there. If it requires changes in the design, we'll take care of anything necessary there. But like you said, we have some work to do. We'll figure out where we are, and then hopefully being our filing probably around the time. I guess that's the only question too, is when is this permit normally filed? Because we'll be going in front of conservation for a few hearings starting in March. I don't know if we want to get a little bit down that road first before we actually do our final filing here, or?
I would think it could be concurrently with the planning board and the conservation. That way any changes can all happen simultaneously instead of you getting one permit and then coming to us afterwards. So we'll just continue for a month or two at a time, or however much time you need, but let's do it all concurrently.
Okay.
And we'll share information with the other boards because we know we're all working towards approval. The other thing I would mention is after you have completed marking wetlands and the Conservation Commission work has been completed, as far as when I say that the work completed, the work that Mrs. Caldonia said needs to be done, like marking wetlands. And hopefully it stops snowing by then. So we would also schedule a site visit so that this committee can go out there and you and whoever represents the company can be there, and we'll do a walk around. It's a large area, but it's customary for the Stormwater Committee to do a site visit before it votes its final decision. So we'll coordinate that through you and the other boards that are involved.
Okay. Thank you very much. Todd will be in touch to calc up that fee. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of the board. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Agenda item 4B, update on Borrego.
It's 2 o'clock, so we can go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is Clearway Energy here? All right. I'm going to open. Yeah, we're a little bit late. I'm going to open the public hearing on Clearway Energy 1420 and 1522 William Street Solar Project. Yes.
I'll be recusing myself for the hearing.
Okay.
Since the abutters as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pius.
And Mr. Ferry is not here currently. He had to step off to do something. He'll be back.
Okay.
Oh, is he back? Please. I don't know who that is.
Is Mr. Ferry here?
No.
Oh, okay. Who would like to start?
No, the applicant, please.
Who would like to speak for the applicant?
Hi, this is Dan Von Allman, the Development Project Manager for Clearway Energy and the Dighton.
I'm sorry. Could you say that again, please? Your name?
Yeah, so sorry. My name is Daniel Von Allman, and I am the Development Project Manager for Clearway Energy.
Okay.
So happy to make some introductory remarks here. We do have a number of folks from our supporting team of consultants on the line here to answer any questions that the committee has, but appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to further discuss the Dighton Solar Project on the Arusha property. We submitted a comprehensive response to Mr. Pilling's questions, comments, concerns that we received in December. So that was submitted to Mr. Pilling on February 5th. We're happy to go through those responses on a line-by-line basis to see if Mr. Pilling or other members of the committee have specific questions for us on those responses. And we have the right folks on the line to get into kind of any of the technical detail that went into the study methodology, hydroflow modeling, or any other items that may benefit from some live discussion here. So yeah, I'm happy to defer to the committee on how this time is best spent, depending on kind of where you are in your review.
Billy?
Yeah, so.
I don't have.
Oh, I have it. Sorry. So yes, we did receive electronically Friday night at 5:15 their responses. Obviously, we're not here over the weekend. Monday afternoon, we did get hard copies. I have not necessarily gone through the entire thing, but what I have read, basically, they're disagreeing with pretty much all of my recommendations and requests. For example, they don't want to do any more test pits out there because they feel that the 2 test pits that were done on the site are indicative of the entire site, even though their own report said observations in the field were consistent with map conditions. When map conditions say water's at 2 feet and they found water at 13 feet. They don't want to dig any more test pits. They said the drainage basin down the side of the road, that they'd rather just dig those holes at the time of construction and they can adjust it if need be. They also said several times that the drainage was reviewed. The drainage was never reviewed by the planning board or the conservation commission for times of concentrations and full paths and any of the modeling. That was not part of the review for either Nova Armstrong or for the other one, Peter Williams, GZA. There's some other questions in here about like the grass, like they use meadow, which is fine. And they say they use meadow, and every other solar facility that's been in town has used grass for what's finished under there. So they're saying it's the standard industry for solar facilities, but every solar farm we've seen is that it's grass. So, but neither here nor there. Like I had a comment in there about the curb number that they used, and I said they used a 79 for pre-development and a 77 for post-development, which would make it look like you had more runoff pre-development, so it skews the numbers. And they said that it was only in the typo in their report, but if you look at their hydrograph reports, it's right in the hydrograph report, which is the calculations they use, that they use 79 for pre-development and 77 for post-development. So I feel like I'm at an impasse, and I think that obviously we're on opposite ends of the spectrum, and maybe a third party should be stepped in to review the drainage calculations at this point in time. Some of the other stuff that's here, for example, I stated that there was an increase in runoff in one area, and they said it's de minimis, but it's an 8% increase in runoff to one of the watersheds, which to me is not de minimis. But you know, there's also a wetland protection policy from 2017, and they said, well, that policy came out after the project was done, but the project wasn't approved till 18, so a policy from 2017 should have applied. Now, why it wasn't reviewed as part of the conservation, I don't know. But all we're looking, you know, it was more meant of, hey, let's look into this, and the response was no, it doesn't apply to us. The fire department had asked for the 20-foot roads because NFPA rules have changed. But their response is the fire department has reviewed the plans, which have been revised to address access issues back in 2018, and they're not changing the design sense. So obviously we got to talk to the fire department. We had asked for additional information on the existing grades in the vicinity of the access road adjacent to the wetlands and vernal pool. They did not provide that. I asked for a chart indicating the volumes of runoff for each analysis point. They did not provide that. So like I say, it's just, I feel like they didn't necessarily respond to what I wanted. And if we're at opposite ends of the spectrum, maybe a third party should be in order. So.
Okay. When you talked about the 8% runoff, is that the area around the Cold River?
It's watershed 1D. I don't know which one that
Okay,
is.
because I remember that was pointed out specifically because there were concerns about that area.
That's a 1D watershed area.
I'm not sure how that watershed or not, east of it.
Mhm. I remember that one being pointed out. I remember it being pointed out because it was an area that we were looking at for possibly a joint project with Swansea for our MVP.
If any of the folks from TRC on the line are able to speak to this, I believe that the watershed 1B area is not in the Coal River area of sensitivity that was identified. I believe it's on the other side of the site, but would like to have our engineers confirm that if possible.
Okay, before I open it up for comment on what Mr. Pilling said. Mrs. Caledonia, I remember when we were out there walking, you talked about wetlands and flags.
Right.
Aren't they supposed to reflag all of that because their flags were gone?
So the flags weren't present. I don't know how the limit of work gets escaped without the flags present. Obviously, we need the flags up, and we need to be able to confirm that it's exactly how it was in the notice of intent. So, and I, you know, I'm very concerned about the vernal pool area because, you know, it would be good to see a cross section of that area where the any access, any fill along that access. If there's any changes to that, we need to know because the orders of conditions explicitly said that any changes needs to come back before the commission. That's what all I have right now.
Okay, does anyone else have anything we want to add to the general discussion before we go back to what Mr. Pilling said? Evan, my first question is, excuse me, Daniel. Based on what I'm hearing, the impression I'm getting, and correct me if I'm wrong, because there has been work done on this previously, and now you've met with, or you will be meeting further with the Stormwater Committee, and we did the site visit. What is the reason or reasons that you feel you don't have to comply with what's being requested by the town?
Yeah, I think that first I want to apologize for any, you know, issue or misunderstanding that came across in the tone of our response. You know, I think unfortunately the intent of our response was lost in the written response. We're absolutely not trying to dig in our heels and be difficult here. I think what we were trying to do was to detail the methodology that went into the stormwater report that was reviewed by the planning board and by the Conservation Commission at the time of the initial application. And so, you know, we certainly understand that the rules for approval have changed since that time. And you know, we want to work collaboratively with the Stormwater Committee here to see a path to approval. And so we were hoping to, you know, explain the methodology that went into the initial report that was reviewed at that time, and hopefully clarify some items in the underlying methodology that we seem to be on a different page on. And so, you know, it feels like there's potentially some more discussion that would be useful to have, Mr. Pilling, with you and our consultants on the line to kind of talk through some of these items and how we can get to a resolution. Our intention was absolutely not to say, you know, you're wrong, we're right. You know, we wanted to explain the underlying methodology that was in the existing report and see if we could come to a workable path forward using that report as a baseline. So, you know, I do want to kind of try and clear the air with that and say, you know, we're not trying to be difficult here. I'm sorry if it came across that way. And, you know, we would welcome a further discussion on many of these items. You know, we did try to go through each one of these and you know, we did update the site plans per the request. We did go out and rehang the flags on the wetland boundaries per the request, and tried to clarify some of the points of discrepancy, but obviously we were not, you know, our letter was not effective in doing that. So, you know, we would welcome some further conversation on this topic.
Mr. Pilling?
Yeah, the tone of the letter did come across as that you were not being cooperative. And it wasn't just with my comments, it was with the fire department, conservation commission. And it wasn't so much the, here's what we were thinking, it was, no, we're not gonna change anything. So obviously, I wanted to move forward, but like I say, if this is, if we're still at an impasse, maybe a third party can be stepping in and evaluate it through the current regulations and see what it is. What was being asked for was just a couple test pits to make sure we were out of the water table and change the watershed line and maybe put in another small basin at the bottom of the hill. It wasn't, you can't have the project. So it just, the response did seem a little bit excessive to me, so.
Daniel, do you feel that you can work some of these things out with Mr. Pilling and get him the detailed information he needs?
I think so, yeah. You know, I think I would love to find a time, Mr. Pilling, for us to connect to talk through some of these specific issues and to see what we can get you to get to a better place here.
Mr. Pilling?
Yeah, I'm willing to at least have that first conversation and see what we get. It won't be this week. This week is miserable, but next week should be a possibility.
Okay. And I'm assuming we're going to be continuing this hearing anyhow, because there's no way we can act on it today. I will point out something. There was mention of the fire chief having reviewed this in 2018. We have a new fire chief since then. As we've had an interim also, but anything relative to the requirements of the fire department would have to be based on a decision of the chief that's currently holding the position. Quite frankly, I would not want to go back to 2018 for a number of reasons, but it will be Chief McGee who will also be involved with you and Mr. Pilling and any other member that is needed. So I think it's important that we point that out right now. Does anyone else wish to comment? Mr. Aggie?
Okay. Yes, I just want to encourage Stormwater Agent Pilling to stay involved. I know that he was deeply concerned when he read the response and the letter, and that was his reasoning for wanting to go to a third party. But I think based on what I've heard from the developers and from this committee, I would just encourage Todd to stay involved. Although I would be okay with a third party, I would not want a third party to be involved. We're more than capable as a committee collectively, and I would just encourage Todd to stay involved.
And also Mrs. Caledonia for the Conservation Commission, obviously. So you're getting together or discussing, however you're going to do this with Daniel. Mrs. Caledonia, you need to stay in touch with Mr. Pilling so that any concerns you have as the conservation agent are also addressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
She comes in here several times a week, so it's not a problem.
Okay, all right, fine.
It's not just to get candy.
She had his cookies over here.
Oh, cookies, okay. Is there, are there any other questions, comments, concerns from anybody? We have abutters, I believe. Are there any abutters out there that wish to speak? If you do.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Francis Crisafulli, 1730 Wellington Street. I'm a direct abutter to the south. And a couple of questions that I have, in the last meeting that was held December 16th, there was a commitment to provide me a copy of the plans electronically. That has not been done, and I believe the receipt of plans from the town hall earlier this week or last week is part of that delay. And I would also like to receive a copy of the minutes from your walkthrough that was held last month. I don't see those posted on the website. I'm not sure if they've not been approved or have been approved as of
You're
yet.
talking about the site visit?
The site visit.
Yeah, I have them in
minutes.
draft. I have them in draft form. So we will be putting those out shortly.
So, certainly my concerns, as an abutter, this is an ecologically sensitive area. It is in very close proximity to the headwaters of the Coles River. And, I'd be concerned with pre and post condition monitoring. I believe you viewed my well or the proximity to my well to this project. And I'd be concerned with, things such as soil erosion, siltation runoff. This is an area that is farmed past the area, and I'm concerned with the migration of pesticides and chemicals that are used as part of that operation, with the lack of vegetation and forestry. Does that end up in my well? Does that end up in the town of Dayton's well, which is in very close proximity to this project as well? And I'd also like to understand the participation of the Army Corps of Engineers. I know that when my driveway was constructed, they took great interest in, migrating through some of the area adjacent to the Coles River. And, I think that their decision or their participation as part of this project in any approvals, is certainly warranted. And I do agree with, the NFPA change, 20 feet versus 16, which was previous. And that's the information I have that I think is relevant to this conversation today.
Okay. Mr. Pilling?
Quick question, Dan. Do you need an ENF for this project?
Sorry, what was that? I didn't quite catch that.
Do you need an environmental notification form for this project?
No, we do not.
The plans that Mr. Chris Fuley is looking for, is this something that can be emailed to him?
Yeah, that's the plan we got emailed to us Friday night. I can forward it to him. I forgot to send it.
Well, are you or Dan?
Yeah, Dan, do you have his email address?
I do not have Mr. Chris Fuley's contact.
Yeah, I think we have it. So
Okay.
we'll
Yeah,
forward it.
I'll send it to you, Dan, in a chat here.
Okay.
I'll at least try to.
Yeah.
There we go.
Is there anything else, any further discussion on this project before we continue the hearing? Hearing none, would somebody make a motion that we continue the hearing?
Well, we need to pick a date.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for right now. Daniel and Mr. Pilling, what kind of time do you need, do you think? And Mrs. Caledonia, that you would need in order to do a review and come to some consensus about what it is, and so that when you met with the, when we continue the hearing, there won't be a lot of things up in the air, maybe just a few things that have to be worked out.
Well, I think we need to have the discussion first to find out what's being done, and, depending on where the wetlands are and the grades and, that kind of thing, it may take a little bit longer, but I know next week we can probably have the meeting with him to kind of go over stuff and figure out his plan of action and what needs to be done. I could do either the 17th or the 18th to meet with him. I assume it would be Zoom and you'd be involved in it, Lisa, but then depending on what they need to do, it could take months or it could take a week. So it's going to depend on the conversation. So I would say at this point, continuing them for a few weeks would make sense.
Okay, so I'm looking at March. By the way, do we have anything else? Well, we'll probably have a request from Hunter's Hill eventually, but that's probably a ways out, do we think?
Well, right now, that's all he's got to do is submit the filing fee, which, in theory, we could have worked out soon, and then we'd be filing it. There are a bunch of outstanding issues that will delay them, like needing test pits, wetland delineations, which won't happen until March or April. So
Okay.
Even if they file it now, we're only going to open and continue until we can get additional information.
Okay. All right, so looking at March. I just as soon stay away from Wednesday, the second Wednesday. Because this morning I had, besides department head, I had MMA and I had to leave that one early to get here. So,
March 3rd is the department head meeting.
yeah, I'd like to stay away from Wednesdays because it's a board of selectmen every other one, second and fourth.
We only need Tuesdays because we would have a board of health meetings on Thursday.
Yeah. Okay, so, if we go, how about March the 9th? It's a Tuesday.
That's acceptable to Clearway. We'll make that work.
Yeah, I can make it work. Looks like Jim, Lisa, yes, Tim. Yep, looks like March 9th would work.
All right, so we will, would be to continue the public hearing on Clearway to Tuesday, March the 9th at 1 p.m. We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, Mr. Aggie? Excuse me, did you have something?
Oh, no, I just wanted to make, I don't know if you wanted the camera on them or just them speaking is enough.
No, we know that, we know the voices. Mr. Pilling,
Aye.
Mr. Rhymes, Mr. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Ferry, are you there?
I don't believe he is here.
Okay, Mrs. Goulart, aye. So it's, we have a unanimous vote that it will be continued to, excuse me.
Chairwoman Goulart, if I could just add, I do want to disclose that I am an associate member of the Conservation Commission here in Dayton as well.
But that's not why you were speaking today,
I
correct?
know, correct. I just wanted to make sure that was noted for the record to avoid
Okay.
any perception.
So our next meeting will be March 9th, 1 p.m.
Thank you. We look forward to speaking then.
Okay. So we all set on this one?
I believe so. So now we go back to 4B.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 4B, update on Borrego. I'm waiting for, I was going to say revision. I'm waiting for their acceptance of the revision I sent them because what they had originally sent, Mrs. Borrego and I looked at and we made revisions to it. And we front loaded, it's a 15-year pilot agreement. So what we were working on was the pilot agreement. That should not be holding up what is going on relative to the actual site. So does anyone else have anything on Borrego?
Which is amazing, is we haven't heard it.
They did clear the land, right? The land got all cleared when we were up there. You know, they took down the trees and all that.
Oh, no, it's pretty much done.
All the panels are in too?
We're
Okay.
seeing some stormwater construction at the entrance area,
Okay,
and I believe, Agent Caledonia said that they have not recorded their order conditions, is that accurate?
Correct, so, yeah, ISM Solar received the original conditions in June 3rd, 2014. So they would have expired June 3rd, 2017. There's no extension request that I can find, and they've never been recorded. There's no, so.
Seems like the thing to do.
But hold on, there's two projects there. Those dates,
We searched them all.
those dates coincide with the first project, not the second project.
Well, then that means they never recorded the second one or the first one.
I don't have a copy of anything, neither does the assessor's office. We went through the registry of deeds today, we couldn't find anything, so if they did, then they need to present it to us.
Okay.
But otherwise, they're not working under a valid permit.
Okay. Who's on first?
so the stormwater that was a work that was mentioned, is that Elm Street 1 closest to the road? Because they were supposed to do all that before they access the one in the back.
So they do all of the stormwater repairs that we require.
Mhm.
There was a concern, or there wasn't a concern. There was a problem with the design of the one at the entrance, which is after you enter the project and you're inside the gate, when you turn parallel with the road, there was supposed to be a swellway that was installed there. There was a problem with the final design during construction. To my knowledge, that never was solved or resolved. And it's my understanding that hasn't been put in. So, but they've not responded to emails or anything. I don't know where anybody is. So I do have a small ace in the hole. I've been applied or requested by council for property owner for property in that solar development for a determination. So I'm going to respond to council and tell them until we get answers to the questions that we have here, I'm not going to move forward with any type of determination until we close that project out. I just received that letter yesterday, so I'm going to use that to our advantage and see if I get some type of response from these people. So
Who, do you have a name of who anyone's trying to deal with on?
right, there's several names. I'm dealing directly with the project manager, who was very responsive to Todd and I when this was being built. And I'm just guessing he's moved on to some other project and, he doesn't make any decisions there. But now that I have a letter from council, now I'm going to send a formal letter to them, letting them know that we have a couple of outstanding issues there that need to be resolved.
Okay, I've got to follow up with Travis Stewart regarding the pilot agreement.
Right.
And I don't know, they all disappear. Anyhow, since I've got to get in touch with him and say, please submit the agreement as the final revisions that Mrs. Beauregard and I sent, because what he proposed, we said absolutely not, go back to what we sent to you. But I'm going to say to him, Stormwater Committee is waiting to hear from other representatives. I realize that's not your part, but it's the same company, so.
We also haven't received any funds for stormwater, which is what triggered me to ask for funds up front now when we issue the permit, because I don't want to be chasing them on the tail end.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Hey, just for the record, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there's nobody on video anymore. It's just these two laptops that are running. There's nobody there.
Everyone left?
Mr. Ferry's in the room.
Oh, okay.
You're catching me over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. Ross can leave. Yes, you are.
Well, can he stand out there in that foyer? Not come in?
Put a chair in there.
Do you need a laptop? Is that all your problem is for a Zoom?
We can even give you a chair.
I gotta leave shortly anyway.
Okay, all right, okay, so Mr. Ferry can come in. Okay, so on 4B, Mr. Aggie, I will follow up with what he described, the contacts he's going to make. When I contact Mr. Stewart for a response to the pilot agreement, I'm going to let him know that we have not heard from other representatives of his company, and the Stormwater Committee would like responses and also payment of the fees that were requested.
It's not that we're looking for a response necessarily. It's a matter of, they can't get the electricity turned on until they address everything. So it's kind of on them, not on us. So.
Well, that's the same situation with the pilot agreement, because one of the things they got to put in there is the go live date, which is usually the last thing that gets filled in. So okay, update on Strawberry Fields. The ZBA approved Strawberry Fields. What's the situation with the Concom? Because my understanding is the Concom is appealing the decision as an abutter. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yes and no. So that, we wanted to do that, and we still want to do that. But I guess we don't have money in our budget to do that and hire an attorney. So yeah. Frankly, there's a engineer, there's a wetland, Nova Armstrong, AKA now Theta, has reviewed Strawberry Fields. I'm trying to stay off that one because it is so big and it's controversial. But I do know that as of last meeting, we were waiting, Nova Armstrong was waiting for additional information. She's also waiting to get paid by them. All I really know about the project right now.
Okay, so what I know, the Board of Selectmen had this on the agenda 2 weeks ago, and they wanted to just deny the request. And I convinced them to hang in there so that we could get some information. Number one, does the Concom have the money to pay for 2 attorneys? Because what they were saying was there would have to be one to represent the Concom and also the ZBA, because in effect you'd be taking action against the ZBA. And the feeling of the Board of Selectmen was, we're not putting money into this pot. The other thing was that the Conservation Commission does not have standing as an abutter because it does not own the land. It controls the land. The deed was issued to the town of Dayton, so that would fall back to the Board of Selectmen to take the action. But they're not truly an abutter. The town of Dayton is the abutter. And so what wasn't clear was when I heard Concom was going to appeal the ZBA decision, it was the same case that came up several years ago when the DEP ruled against the Concom. We appealed that decision and got it overturned. That was the town versus DEP. The town prevailed. But that's not the case this time. So that's another reason why the board was saying, we're not going to dump money into this if it isn't the same thing. Everybody thought it was the same thing, so it should be in our favor. But now that we've been told this, so the 2 questions were, does Concom have the money, number one, and can Concom use their money for legal fees?
I guess we do have money, but we wouldn't,
Yeah, and it's a lot of money. So anyhow, I'm quite sure at the Board of Selectmen's meeting tonight, it's going to be denied, because even technically, even if the Concom had the money, you can't go out and hire counsel without permission of the Board of Selectmen, even if you're going to pay it yourself. And if it's not the same case, and you don't have standing as an abutter, it seems like all you're going to do is spend money to pay attorneys, and you're not going to prevail. So are there any other, for lack of a better word, appeals or anything else relative to Strawberry Fields? So if it progresses, who next gets involved? Who provides oversight? DEP? I mean, I know our inspectors have something to say. All right, so yes, the neighbors have a case, yes.
Couldn't we have joined our case to theirs? Couldn't they have been joined together?
not as a conservation commission.
Well, not as the town of Dayton either, because
Then you're representing the homeowners. We don't want to put ourselves in that situation either, you know? This came about the board of selectmen before. And that's why it was reverted to the Conservation Commission to use their funds in order to seek legal action. And it wasn't, I think the board of selectmen did vote to expend $1,000. There was pooled money and resources with the residents at the time, but the town decided they did the wrong thing and didn't want to go that avenue any further. So that's why I think.
so what the town did like 4 weeks ago, we had, because there had been we understood there was going to be an appeal. You know, with all of these appeals and things, you have deadlines. And if you miss a deadline, you're over and done with. So I believe that the motion I made was, can we at least pay counsel? And I think it was Matt Costa through Gay and Gay. can we at least pay council to meet any deadlines, like for filing, so you're not automatically disqualified because you missed a deadline? And that was the extent of the money that he's referring to. At the meeting 2 weeks ago, the developer also spoke, because I had said, I had seen the deed notation, and I said, Concom controls it. They don't own it. It's the town of Dayton. You know, and I explained to them how we acquired Council Oak. Council Oak 2 belongs to the town of Dayton. It has a conservation restriction and an agricultural restriction, but the owner, the deed, the listed owner is the town of Dayton. So since the Board of Selectmen would have had to vote to pursue this, as I said, I was able to convince them to put it off for 2 weeks so we could get some questions answered. But the homeowners, I believe, are still pursuing it. Because I had a phone call and the question was, why aren't you pursuing it? And I said, because it would have to be the town of Dayton objecting as an abutter. And I said, we didn't vote to do that. And it's not the same case. If it were that simple, I would think even the developer would be looking at it twice and will, you know, it got rejected. The DEP decision was overturned in favor of the town the last time. But again, that's not the case this time. So I believe tonight that the Board of Selectmen will vote not to fund it and not to give permission to hire attorneys to represent the town as an abutter, because we don't think it's got a prayer.
Well, I will say that Ada, when they reviewed it last time, their findings, well, it was no bronze drawing at that time, I'm sorry. Their findings was there's multiple resources, you know, the Conservation Commission, you know, has jurisdiction over, because we have the bylaws, so we have jurisdiction over isolated areas. So now, you know, we don't have that jurisdiction because the zoning board took it away. And that's what the Conservation Commission has.
Yeah, but from my understanding, what Data's review basically said is the project doesn't need stormwater management, which is a huge.
Right.
So.
I don't think it's totally over, simply because assuming the project is going to move forward, there will be inspections. There will be people going on that property. And quite frankly, any member of this committee, which was one of the things that I insisted on and was told we had no authority. And then Attorney Mitchell said, Selectman Goulart is correct. Any member of the Stormwater Committee, in carrying out their regular duties, can go on the property to do an inspection or something else. And that could be Concom, it could be Mr. Pilling, it could be Mr. Ferry, it could be the fire chief. Acting in their official capacity, if they see violations, they've got to report them. Whether it's, obviously the Stormwater Committee would be made known, and so would the town, but certainly DEP. And, you know, in Massachusetts, EPA has primacy. So it would also seem that the property owners that are abutters still have a case, because their appeal is based on basically what happened the last time, and they have the documents to back them up. So I really, although we may not have the opportunity as a town to pursue this further, I don't believe it's over by a long shot. And I think if anyone going out there doing their regular duties as an employee of this town see things, they're going to raise issues. And so I think that's probably what we're going to be dealing with going forward.
Is this decision already been recorded, Jim, at the registry of deeds, so they've already started the appeal process? About us?
I received an email of an official filing with the courts of appeal from council. I was just looking for it. I can't find it. Evidently, the server on my iPad doesn't let me go back far enough in my emails. I just found that out. So I'd have to go to my desktop to read it. But I remember I was on vacation. I read the complaint that was filed in court. It was a very long complaint. So I know it's a file.
From Hellbach.
Right.
So the clock starts the appeal process. We need to find out how far along they are in the appeal process and what other avenues would the town of Dayton have to grant going forward. Do we know that?
If they don't file an appeal, that's the end of it. I mean, I can't issue a permit until the appeal is rectified. So we're still eons away.
Yeah, and I think Strawberry Fields is gonna be a agenda item for a time to come. But the other thing too is, even if a permit is issued or permits are issued, anyone going out there as an agent of the town of Dayton doing their regular job, their regular duties, they're going to have to report violations. And this is exactly what I had said and wrote in the letter to requesting the ZBA to include it, which was objected to by the developer and his attorney. However, Counsel Mitchell said she's absolutely right, because they had said we couldn't go out there except by appointment. And I said, no, that's not true. Our inspectors can go out at any time. The fire chief can go out there anytime. So we will have people looking at the site. We will have people doing inspections. And I'm sure if there are violations, it's going to be known. And although they keep saying that everything is EPA, excuse me, is DEP, it's EPA in Massachusetts, period. And if a situation were discovered that was bad enough, I wouldn't hesitate to go to the EPA and ask them to look into it. I mean, period. We're all,
I actually anticipate this being an agenda item until the project is completed, because Agent Pilling and I, along with Mrs. Caledonia, will probably give this committee updates as the project progresses.
And as I said, Mr. Ferry, the fire chief, anyone else who goes out there, whatever comes up, we're going to have to be looking at it. So, that one's going to stay on for a while, Mrs. Cassie. Anything else on Strawberry Fields? No, we're going to move to update on Bristol Aggie. Ta-da!
Yes, hi.
They opened up, right?
They did, yes. The CNC building is open for business. I'm just not wearing my mask because my ears are hurting. I wear it too long. So the CNC building is done. There are some punch list items, but the students have occupied. The fire chief wasted no time. 9 o'clock Monday morning, the first day we started, we had a fire drill. It went off without a hitch. We had a couple concerns when we were doing our final walkthrough about staging areas for kids and whatnot, but it all worked well. That said, I'm not giving full occupancy permits to each building until the entire project is completed. So I gave them what's called a TCO, a temporary certificate of occupancy, to make sure that we keep our grips on each of the buildings until this entire project is completed. What I did found out in getting final sign-offs is that the sewer department had requested that a holding tank be put in for the existing pump station. However, I was unaware of that requirement until the 11th hour. So what I did not want to withhold or hold up the occupancy for obvious reasons because of that. So the sewer department, I, the school, and the contractor all agreed to a 2-month stay, and that they would receive no more occupancy permits for additional buildings until that tank was installed. It's my understanding that tank will be installed sometime in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So the sewer department's concern is that there's no storage capacity in the current pump station. Therefore, if there's any problem at all, we risk the potential of having sewage above grade, which is a concern. So they're requiring a holding tank to be put in just in case there's any type of a problem. That'll buy us some time so that we don't have a sewage discharge.
So this is like an overflow?
Yeah.
How big is it?
Smaller than I thought, 1,500 gallons. Thought it would be much bigger than that. But that's what the boys wanted. So that's what they get.
So is it going to be in that fenced in area where the,
I think they're working out the logistics, but the answer is yes. It's supposed to stay within the confines.
No, it's not gonna be within the fencing area. It's going to be about a little ground anyway. It's
Oh.
not from the side of the fence.
but it's going to be near there though, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's going to be an H20 loaded tank then.
So it's a sealed tank that if there was overflow, it would have to be pumped, I assume.
Well, let's talk about that, because I've got a lot of questions about this. I was quite upset when I heard about this in the 11th hour, so I'm gonna get a chance to, but that is a great question, because the only way that overflow can be relieved of its sewage is by external. Yeah.
No, the internal wall.
How?
You can't backflow.
Back when you gravity.
The internal pump on gravity.
What, how does that work? You know, it doesn't work. So you have an overflow for an existing pumping system, which has very little, small reservoir. So when the elevation of the liquid comes up, and the pump can't maintain it, it overflows into the tank. But you can't get that back out unless you pump it out.
Yes, that's what CEO was trying to say to begin with, because they were worried about the septic.
Yeah.
But the pumps themselves will be lower than the bottom of your tank.
It's not.
It doesn't sound feasible.
It doesn't. I have to see it, because the reason I'm asking this is that it would now become a tight tank.
That's what I thought you were
So,
describing.
Right, so, you know, I've not seen any plans on this, but I have a lot of questions about it. This is exactly why we hold the documents. So, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Diane doesn't think it's too much.
She has a plan?
I don't need this.
All right. How do I let this go?
I just need to know because I'm curious, because I thought you were talking about a tight tank, and I'm thinking about, and I don't know if cars still have these, but you'll remember that radiators had overflow tanks, but it could flow back and forth because it was pressure. Yeah, it was pressure. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm wondering, well, if it's strictly an overflow, how do you empty it out?